when you can, select a lower cost region. When it comes to bandwidth, you're going to pay for those outbound transfers. So if you are crossing billing zones, there will be a charge. So if you have the ability to try to keep all of your regions in the same billing zone. But there's other ways to save money, whether you're choosing it through reserved instances or you're taking advantage of the hybrid benefit. Let's go ahead and put that all together in the pricing calculator. You know, I hear it. I hear you going through your computer screen saying like, Chelsea, how do I know what all of this is going to cost? I just want to know a number. Well, the pricing calculator can provide you with that number. Now, I want to point out one thing before we go into the pricing calculator. This is an estimate. It is not an official, this is an invoice. It's going to help you estimate your costs. Because again, it can vary based off of country, billing, taxes, customer type. There's a couple other nuances that go into figuring out your final cost, but this is really good when you're trying to figure out which product should I select, which region should I select. So let's go ahead and look at the pricing calculator. So the pricing calculator here, let me zoom in so it's a little bit easier for you to see. It should look a little bit familiar. It looks a little bit like the All Services menu from the portal. And that's because this allows you to basically put together an estimate that you can save or export to Excel of all the services that you're looking to buy. So let's go ahead and go to Compute and let's price out a virtual machine. All right, so let's go ahead and view. And again, you can add multiple, but I'm just going to do a pricing for a virtual machine. So not changing anything, just as is how the calculator popped up, what you will see here is that the pricing for a virtual machine with an operating system Windows in the US region running 730 hours a month as a D2 will cost you $152 a month. Let's talk about some of our things that impact cost. So the first one, resource type. You know, virtual machines have a different cost. Versus, let's just, for giggles, let's add a storage account. And so this is going to add it to the same thing. So a storage account costs $20 a month. So just by looking at the virtual machine itself, there's a different cost. So resource types impact cost. Second, let's look at location. So let's just play around with this a little bit. So West US, that's the region closest to me, but let's go to East US and where I've been deploying. So let's do, we're at 152.57. Let's see what East US does. It drops it down a little bit. Now, you know, I always pick East US. All right, let's go, let's go to Norway. Okay, Norway's a little bit more expensive. You know, Switzerland, let's see what Switzerland is. 172. Okay, so Switzerland's cheaper than Norway. Australia? Okay, Australia East isn't that bad. How about Australia Southeast? Same price. So not only are you wanting to deploy your resources close to your customers, but again, when you have the opportunity to choose a low-cost region, that's the best thing that you can do. All right, so as far as the operating system goes, so if I choose Windows, you can see here I have the Azure hybrid benefit. So if I already have a Windows license, I can say, nope, I'm bringing that with me from my on-premises environment. All right, so we have our operating system. I'm going to click a standard tier. Essentially, I would recommend you're picking your standard for anything in production. If you're picking a basic or low priority, this will be in the event that Azure needs additional resources. They can actually take your resources offline. For production, making sure that you're selecting standard. All right, now again with the resource types, this is where you can select your different SKUs. I'm going to stick with just the good old D2. Now let's play with the number of hours it's running. So if I wanted to run it, half the time of the month, you can see that lowers the price. 730 is the full month. If I wanted one virtual machine versus 4 virtual machines. Let's just stick with one. Now you can see where we have our reservation instances here. So if I reserve it for 1 year, drops it down. I get a 40% discount. If I do it for 3 years, drops it down even more. All right. So again, there are ways for you to save money. Now, when you want, you can actually export this and you can share this as an Excel document. You can share it with others on your team. So I'm going to just hit and save. Oh, I'm not logged in. But if I was logged in with an Azure account that has pricing, I can actually save this estimate to my account. Now you'll see here that these are not your actual quotes. It just depends, because by day, there could be a change in the service, your currency, and the key thing here, type of agreement. So type of agreement, what does that mean? Customer type. Are you web direct? Are you enterprise? Are you working with a cloud solutions provider? So again, all of this is going to just be an estimate. You can work with your Microsoft rep to get a more clear estimate or a better, more specific quote. All right. But this is a really great tool if you're curious about roughly how much is that going to cost me. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, wait, is that really going to save me money compared to doing it in my on-premises data center? And that's a really great question. So we have what's called the total cost of ownership calculator. And this total cost of ownership calculator, you do need to have some information about your workload. So if you don't have like information on how many servers you have, your databases and storage, plus your cost, electricity, rent, this may not be the best tool for you. However, if you do have access to that information, you can actually go in, plug in all of that information, including your rent, your electricity bill, and it will actually compare the cost of running that exact same data center in Azure. So what we can see here is from the report, we're looking about we have most of our costs coming from the data center itself. So this is your labor fees, your rent, all of that, with very little coming from the actual compute side. If we were to switch it over to Azure then, running this exact same workload, you no longer are paying for that data center. Because again, when you work with Azure or any public cloud computing, you are not paying for that physical infrastructure, or you are taking advantage of having someone else run that physical infrastructure for you. And so even though your networking, compute and storage costs go up, it still is less than running it in your on-premises database. So if you have that information, highly recommend that you check out the total cost of ownership calculator, because it will let you know whether or not you can save money by switching your workload into Azure. Now, with all the different costs in Azure, you might be saying, okay, cool, I've estimated it. I know that I want to run my workload in Azure, but there's still more that I want to do. And I want to, how much I am spending. Because remember, we set up that tag earlier so we can track by manager. I want to set budgets. How do I set up all those alerts? And the Azure Cost Management is the tool for you. The Azure Cost Management tool will allow you to look at all your different billing reports. And if you've taken advantage of tags, you can drill down even deeper. If you have budgets, you can actually set budgets to not let certain users or certain subscriptions go over a certain spend. Or you can have it set up alerts, so where you can alert managers or anybody's in charge of a project as you start to approach that budget. So in my account, I have a $150 budget. Every time I log in, it lets me know how much of my budget is left. And just like when we looked at Azure Monitor, we have that cost management piece. So there's going to make recommendations on how you can save money. And I think that's the big question with anything in Azure. You're looking at how you can minimize your costs. So first thing, go through a cost analysis. Use the pricing tools that are provided to you. Remember, even though that they're estimates, they get you pretty dang close. So the pricing calculator and the total cost of ownership calculators are really important with just, first understanding, all right, What kind of budget are we looking in? Now, once you figure out that budget, you have Azure Monitor and Azure Advisor that are going to make recommendations. We want to be able to save you money because the better it is for more you like Azure, the more likely you are to use it. So we're not trying to price gouge you. We want to make sure that you're optimized and you're spending smartly. So once you've gone through Monitor and Azure Advisor, use spending limits. Don't just give everybody free range. We've talked about role-based access control and all different ways to govern your Azure environment. Do the same thing with spending. Set up those spending limits, and that way through Monitor, you can get alerts. When you have the ability to save money, definitely take advantage of Azure Reservations or Azure Hybrid Benefits. Those are really good ways to save additional money. We saw how it could chop your cost in half. Imagine if you were able to use a combination of the two. As far as when you're deploying your locations, while it may be super cool to deploy your VM or your resources to Switzerland or Poland, unless you need to, it could be an added cost that's unnecessary. So when you can choose low-cost locations, do it. And, keep up to date, whether you're staying in touch with your Azure account rep or you keeping up on the updates page, which I'll show in a little bit. Just know what's going on with Azure customers and your Azure subscription. That way, if there's any changes or maybe there's different ways for you to save money, you're aware of it. And then last but not least, I kind of already talked about it, but is applying those tags, those cost owners. Remember we had that manager, Blake, who overspent. Well, because I had the tags, I was able to identify him and then set up spending limits for him. So there's a lot of different ways that you can help minimize your costs in Azure, but it takes the work on your part to make sure that you're up to date. But we have all those tools ready for you. So know for the exam that you do need to understand how costs are incurred. I would definitely make sure that you know the 6 factors that impact costs and then the tools that are available to you for estimation. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the service level agreements and service life cycles with Azure as we finish up this module. So the first thing is, what is a service level agreement? Now, we've talked about high availability and uptimes and what happens if you're down. Well, essentially, when you sign up for Azure or you deploy certain Azure services, there is a service level agreement. And that service level agreement is a contractual obligation that Microsoft is committing that this specific service will be up and running a minimum time per month. And so if, for example, a service is down beyond that minimum agreed time, well, then a credit is then applied to your account. Now, one thing to know that every single service has its own SLA associated with it. So it's not just one general SLA. But free and preview items do not offer SLAs. So this does not apply to free and preview. So let's look at what some of those SLAs are. An SLA can range from 99% up to what we call 5 nines, so 99.999%. And you can see the higher the SLA, the maximum downtime that you will experience per month goes down. Let's just say, for example, what we call 3 nines, that 99.9%, the maximum downtime per month with that type of service with that SLA can be up to 43 minutes and 49 seconds. Now, that doesn't mean that you will be down for 43 minutes and 49 seconds every single month, but that means that Microsoft is meeting their contractual obligation for availability as long as they're under 43 minutes and 49 seconds a month. But maybe your service, your product, your resource can't have that type of 43 minutes. If it went down for 43 minutes, that would cause chaos. So maybe you need to build up a higher SLA. So 5 nines, for example, that one's not a lot of products offer 5 nines, but in that case, it's 26 seconds a month. So when you're looking at building in your resiliency and your availability into your products and services, just make sure that you are aware of what kind of downtimes that you can tolerate. Now, there's different things that impact your SLA. One, the more services that you add to your solution, the more complex it gets. And because you have a more complexity, the SLA is going to go down. Because if everything's a fraction, as you multiply, the fractions are going to get smaller. And if you choose a free service or a preview feature, those won't have SLAs associated with them. But if you want to raise your SLA, your service level agreement, yesterday Lorraine showed you availability zones. That's one way to increase your SLA when it comes to virtual machines. Same thing with building in redundancies into your systems. So if you're curious what your SLA will look like if you have multiple services, that's what we call a composite SLA. With the composite SLA, the way to figure that is you just simply multiply the SLA for your first resource times your second resource. And you can do this as many as you want. Mathematically, when you multiply a fraction with another fraction, it is never going to equal 100%. It's just not possible. But there's ways for you to improve your SLA, again, through that redundancy and those availability zones. You shouldn't have to do any type of calculations on your exam, but just know that as far as your SLAs goes, that's important for you as you build out your services. Now, I told you that preview and free services do not have SLAs associated with them. And this is really important to know. Please do not put preview features in your production environment. I'm serious here. Because they do not have an SLA. Preview features, these are features that are still in test. Maybe they're being evaluated by different Azure customers. Essentially, they have not been released to what we call generally available. So this is still in preview mode. When it's in preview, not only does it not have an SLA, but there is no guarantee that it will make it to general availability. So sometimes it might disappear. And if you put preview in production and it disappears, oh my goodness, things can break. Things go terrible. It's chaos. Everybody's freaking out. Just don't do it, please. So, we don't put preview things in production. But with the preview program, this is a really cool opportunity for you to see features that are to come. Sometimes Microsoft is taking that feedback directly that you submit and making those changes and releasing new features. So things go into preview, gives a chance to get feedback, fix any bugs. And then once it's been through full testing, it moves to generally available. And after that's completed, then, then if it has an SLA associated with it, it will get one, and then you can put it in production. If you're curious, where you are on the status of the preview features, this is where you can actually check. There is an Azure updates page. And let me actually pull that up for you. So the Azure Updates page allows you to either subscribe to the RSS feed, and this is where you can search keywords of any products that you're using. So if you see a preview feature that you love and you're like, where is it? You can search for it here, and you can see whether it's now available, if it's in preview, or if they're currently working on it. And again, you can browse by feature or the different update types. So this is a really great feed to save if you're curious where you are in the update, in the preview pipeline. But just know, as long as it's in preview, does not have any type of SLA associated with it, and you do not put it in production. So there we go. You made it. You made it to the end of Module 6, our final module for all of AZ900. And this could be a brand new module to you if you've never priced out Azure before. So remember, the pricing calculator is your friend. If you're ever curious roughly what it's going to cost, go out to that pricing calculator and get that estimate. Same thing with the total cost of ownership estimate. If you're looking at making that transition from your on-premises database or your data center into Azure. Great tools that are available, and as well as understanding that the factors that impact your cost. A couple of other things that we took a look at is the updates within Azure. How do you know when the latest and greatest new features are coming out, so you can subscribe to that RSS feed. But that's everything that we have for you. I'm so happy that you were able to join us for 2 days full of information preparing you for the AZ900 exam. If you need a quick refresher or if you wanted to test out your knowledge, I encourage you to check out the full learning path that has all of the information covered from both part 1 with Lorraine and everything that I covered with you today at aka.ms/azfunpath. There is supplemental reading, documentation, videos, as well as those handy dandy knowledge checks. But as you prepare for the exam, I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I can't wait to see those badges that you earn and you post them to your LinkedIn and other social media. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.